Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, let's get some energy back. It's early morning. We are getting ready for coffee and tea. Thank you all for coming. I am Rohit Dadwal. I look after the MMA business in Asia. I'm going to, over the next 20 minutes, talk something which is about Smarties, but more about how and what is important when we are talking about advertising. Smarties is all about getting the best practices, understanding what are the best campaigns which impact the business. It's all about understanding how that storytelling actually helps build businesses. Smarties is a global program. It's a very well-recognized program. We do this across 20 odd countries, do it at a market level, regional level, and at a global level. But there's something which is common across all of this. It is recognition. It is recognized globally, whether it's from a ranking perspective, from a media perspective, creative, etc. The other thing which is very important is it's all focused on business impact. We truly believe advertising and marketing should be held responsible for the sales that it drives. And that's the core function of marketing. And that's what it should be doing. In order to do that, something that goes across all markets, something that goes across all campaigns, is a lot about stories. Whether we are doing this, we are taking insights like Toluna was presenting the insights today. Whether those insights are from Latin America or Asia, North America or Africa. Something which is common across all insights is this spark of the stories. The story has to be very good. It has to spark some emotion. It has to spark some relevance with you guys. And that's where it starts to add value. It has to be something which is truthful. When I say truthful, it's all about making sure that you are able to believe in what you're saying, what you're talking about. We also believe it has to have a life of its own from an Odyssey perspective. It has to be compelling enough for people to understand what that really means. It has to be relevant. It has to be revolutionary also, because unless it's relevant to the story that you're building, it does not add value. And last but not the least, it has to be something that's left behind from a perspective of yearning. You need to leave the consumer with something to desire more. And that desire, in most cases, is the purchase that people end up doing for the marketing products. And that is really the common thread, which is story. Every marketing campaign tells a story. And that's a common thread. And it's easy to forget sometimes in this hustle between brand and performance marketing and all that. But storytelling is still the most important aspect. And we somehow tend to forget that in between campaigns, with business measures, with business criteria, sales, etc. But what we do not realize is every effort of brand building, every effort of emotion that you leave the consumer with regard to your brand actually aids that sale. If not today, in 6 months' time, in 7 months' time, in 1 year's time. So, if I were to show this slide to you, take a second, read this slide, and if I were to move on and ask you, who wore the helmet? Can somebody tell me? You saw the slide. It went fast. It was there for 10 seconds. It didn't go that fast. But anybody can tell me who did what in that slide? You all saw it for 10 seconds. Somebody did something. Again, I'll go back. Pete did something, helmet, Frank. Again, who was on the boat? I showed it to you again. Who was on the boat? What did Pete do? Okay, we spoke about Pete. Okay, now, 5 seconds, not more than 5 seconds. See this. Okay, less than 5 seconds. Who went down the chimney? Santa Claus. You all know. This is not difficult because there is context. I don't have to. Who got shot? John F. Kennedy. You all know the answers. Why? Because there is a story that we have grown up with. It's not easy to forget that story. There's a context to that story. Stories are facts, or not so much in case of Santa Claus, but wrapped in context and delivered with emotion. Now, when I go back to these slides, each one of them is a story that we've grown up with. So when I was to ask you a question, who built the boat? Noah built the boat, Shakespeare did this, Santa Claus went down the chimney. It is not something that you needed to know. You didn't need to see this. But with this slide, you had no context. There was no story here that was built. And therefore, it becomes very important to understand the relevance of that story. And it has to be delivered with emotion, because all of those points that were on that screen actually delivered an emotion with you or with us. These are all more generic ones. They could be personal stories for you that you could be delivering. I could have a story of eating a chocolate, the first time I ate a chocolate, or the Cadbury ad, or a Perfetti ad, or something else. I do have my own stories, and those stories are important because they're grounded in some facts, in emotions that you built. So, what I'm going to share with you is a video here.
Who wrote this intro?
Have a look at it. Can we dim the lights?
Public Affairs?
Yeah. You mind if I give it a polish?
Is there a problem?
No, it's great. You mind if I change it?
I'd prefer if you didn't.
Just the same.
Public Affairs has cleared the text. If it's going to be changed, I'd prefer if the president...
This is from West
See,
Wing.
that's kind of what he pays me to do, so...
Look, I don't want to step on your toes. You don't want to step on mine. We're both writers.
Yes, I suppose, if we broaden the definition to those who can spell.
Excuse me?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Sir, this is the crew from NASA Public Affairs.
How you doing?
Sir, we're going to run you through the drill for tomorrow morning. First of all, you'll be flanked on either side by the Flight Operations Manager, David Narakawa, and NASA Chief Administrator, Dr. Peter Jobson. On either side of them will be Dr. Samuel Thurman of the Meteorite Analysis Team from the Johnson Space Center and Dr. Joyce Gray Sutton, Planetary Geologist from Cal State Northridge. On these monitors, you'll be seeing the images beamed back from the surface, and on this computer screen, you'll be able to read the questions being sent in by the kids. I strongly urge you,
Yes.
I strongly urge you,
I know.
I strongly urge you, Mr. President, to act as moderator and pass the questions off to one of the experts on the panel rather than answer it yourself.
Yes.
Would you like to see some of the questions?
We have questions in advance.
Some of them, would you put them up?
Sure. Katie, 6th grader, Green Oaks, Junior High School, Austin, Texas, asked, how old is the planet Mars? That's a great question, Katie. The planet Mars is 4.6 billion years old.
What did I just say?
I knew that one.
Nobody likes a know-it-all.
Yes, God forbid that while talking to 60,000 public school students, the president should appear smart.
That's fine, just don't show off.
I don't show off. Stevie, 4th grader, PS31, Manhattan, asked, what is the temperature on Mars? Well, Stevie, if one of our expert panelists were here, they would tell you the average temperature ranges from 15 degrees to minus 140.
That happens to be wrong. It ranges from 60 to minus 225.
I converted it to Celsius in my head.
Thank you.
Can I see the intro?
It's up on the prompter.
Good morning. I'm speaking to you live from the West Wing of the White House. Today, we have a very unique opportunity to take part live in an extremely historic event which, whoa, boy.
How you doing, Mr. President?
Who wrote this intro?
I did, sir. I'm Scott Tate from NASA Public Affairs.
Scott, unique means one of a kind. Something can't be very unique, nor can it be extremely historic.
While we're at it, do we have to use the word live twice in the first two sentences like we just cracked the technology?
Look,
we're also broadcasting in living color, right?
Sam,
Yeah.
he's going to make some changes.
You going to clear him with me?
I doubt it. Read this. Good morning. 11 months ago, a 1,200-pound spacecraft blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. 18 hours ago, is it 18 hours ago? We're on the air at noon Eastern.
Yeah.
18 hours ago, it landed on the planet Mars. You me and 60,000 of your fellow students across the country, along with astroscientists and engineers from the Jet Propulsion Lab in Southern California, NASA Houston, and right here at the White House, we're going to be the first to see what it sees and to chronicle the extraordinary voyage of an unmanned ship called Galileo 5.
He said it right.
This clip is very powerful when you look at it in retrospect of the emotion, the storytelling, the narrative, etc. What you saw in the first part was a lot of jargon. Admiral, this, Galileo, space, everything else. But honestly, raise hands if any one of you remember the first 2 minutes of this video, of what was discussed. But tell me if you remember the last 30 seconds of the story that was built up. There you go. That's proof. It has to be bound in context. It has to drive that emotion. The fact that Sam actually started with 11 months back has a context, is a timeline. So there's a stark difference between Scott Tate and Sam Seaborn. One was very factual, very methodical, very numbers, facts, etc. But there was no emotion there. This is Sam Seaborn, which has all the emotions. It is appropriate, it's personal, it builds a journey, it builds a story, etc. On the other hand, Scott was cold, not friendly, etc. And that to us is all advertising and marketing that should be. It should not be Scott. It should all be Sam Seaborn. That is what drives emotion. That's what builds connectivity. If we tend to get lost in this jargon world of performance, etc., and become Scott, but that's not what we want, because we do not leave the consumer with an emotion. We do not leave them with a journey. We don't leave them with a spark or a perspective to yearn for more. I want to know what happened next on the Galileo 5, because that's how that story was being built. So when you look at Scott's story and Sam Seaborn's story, how powerful was Scott? But the frequency for that has to be very high for that impact to be built. I have to play that 10 times for you to remember the 7 names of the admirals and so on and so forth, because it's not easy. But after 10 times, maybe it will become, but then it becomes a story of repetitiveness for you, like Santa Claus is, like Noah is, like JF Kennedy is. They didn't become stories day one. They became stories over a period of time. But when you actually do live through the storytelling narrative that Sam was building on, you don't need that frequency at that high level, because it's driven on emotion. It's driven on a story. It's driven on certain truth, a yearning, and a spark. And therefore, the frequency needs to be very low. What we are saying here is the basic story pattern is very important. And I think in advertising and marketing, storytelling and spotting stories has to be a critical element. Creativity does not stem by itself. It has to be driven by something which is relevant, which builds on itself and drives the emotion behind it. And it should describe what has happened 11 months back. There's a reference. A good story has to see what happened. Galileo landed or will land on Mars the first time. And it needs to make you feel you and I are the first ones to see it live. It's a feeling that is being driven in the sentence. In that 2 sentences, he actually narrated all these aspects of emotion, storytelling, yearning, truth, and also the fact that it was relevant and built an odyssey around it. So anything that has happened in the past, for example, something that is going to happen now or future, if combined perfectly, in a simple sentence can be the most powerful story. You don't need to build stories which are paragraphs long. A sentence can deliver a story. I'll give you an example of this sentence here. Please take a minute to read this. Until recently, Australia had 9 banks, but the big 4 gobbled up the smaller ones, leaving Australians with little choice and higher fees. Virgin Mobile has arrived to give Australians a choice again. What was the case? What was the history? What happened? What is going to happen going forward? One statement gives the entire history of the banking industry in Australia. And it's very powerful because it's telling the narrative, it's building the story, stating the facts. There were 9 banks, some of them were built up, some of them were gobbled up. And it's giving an insight into the future, what that future is going to look like. And that to me is very important. So what is really key here, what I'm going to leave you guys with toward the end is, stories is not just about telling stories. It's also about listening. It's also by triggering stories. Stories don't come from you only. They come from people around you. There are certain stories that you tell. There are certain stories that people tell you. And then there are other sources of stories. When you learn this, and when I am calling them stories, but when you learn these incidents, when you learn all of this, that is the narrative that actually help you build the story. You need to tell the stories to get stories. What I'm telling you now is hopefully going to build a story from you that this is what I saw this video which was talking about this. I saw this slide which spoke about Santa Claus. It will help build that story. So everything that is in a conversation helps build that. And that's exactly what advertising should be. It should help the consumer build that conversation, build that emotion, build that connect. And sometimes you actually need to ask the right question. We don't necessarily give a lot of importance to the kind of questions we ask. Do we really need to start with why? You should ask yourself whenever next time you want to pose a question to your team or to yourself, what if we were to flip this? If we were to flip why, how, what, when, where, to start with when. Starting with when starts the story. Starting with why never starts a story. Think about it. If I were to say, when I landed day before yesterday evening at the Bombay airport, you already know the context of the timing. Why I landed is not the point. I landed for Smarties doesn't make sense. It doesn't build a story. It tells you, states a fact, but it doesn't build a story for you. When, where, what, how. If you were to flip that, you are making very compelling stories. And sometimes those questions have to be very easy. But how do you get a story out of somebody? It depends on the question that you ask. That's sometimes also the question that advertising is asking the consumer. Are you being healthy? But there's a way to ask the question. How did your parents meet? Is asking for a story. Where did your parents meet? Is stating a fact. Shimla, that's it, finished. How did your parents meet? My parents met when they were doing their medical in college in Shimla. And there's a story there. So ask the right question. When and where can make that difference? How do projects go wrong? Is a story. Why did this project go wrong? The technology guy wasn't there. Finished. There's no story there. Do leaders here make good decisions? Potential story. So asking the right question is very important to actually build the story. And therefore, that advertising, the element of advertising, when we keep on saying, are we engaging the consumer? Consumer doesn't get engaged by facts. If I were to just give a fact that I drive, I have 400 horsepower in this car, it doesn't matter. It's means to the end. The story has to matter. The emotion, the connect has to matter. So, some of the tips that I will leave you with this conversation is, you have to practice. This doesn't come naturally to everybody. Please practice starting with when rather than starting with why. Starting with the emotions, not starting with fact. Starting with the timeline, not starting with the conclusion. Starting with history, not starting with the future. Or starting with the future with another future in mind. There is certain points. You have to be very sure what you're talking about, and it has to be precise. The Virgin Mobile pasted script on the screen, one sentence had the entire history of the banking industry. You can be short. Stories don't necessarily need to be long. So, I do believe what we really need to work on as we move forward as an industry for advertising and marketing is to make sure that we bring that storytelling back. It is all about storytelling. We leave the emotions. A lot of the brands in the last 5 years have been built and killed, and nobody remembers them because there was no story behind them. But you still remember brands which told stories, and you grew up with those stories. It is an important element. I think with the weightage of technology, AI, MarTech, etc., performance, we tend to forget that. That doesn't build brands. That is not the core for advertising and marketing. We need to make sure that we go back to that core, or at least it's an integral part of every advertising marketing campaign that we do. Because whether it's the spark, whether it's the truth, Odyssey, Relevation, or Yearning, they are all connected. It all has to be from the starting to the end. It has to be connected. It will yield better results than what we believe performance or otherwise technology can do. Storytelling is an art. Let's revive that. Thank you so much.